Hi chaps, so here we have a after report of the Battle of Brandywine. This is by GMT, Great Battles of the American Revolution. Dasha Villan has recently done a series on this game, which has actually inspired me to dust the game off and get stuck in. So I say this is an after battle report. I actually finished at turn 8, British turn 8. With a British victory. Not a major victory, no major objectives were taken. I'll just go through the battle. Kind of a bloody one, as you can see up there. Captured units on the left, eliminated units on the right. Basically, we had the British coming up here and holding the Americans at the ford. Or at least the Americans were holding off the British at the different fords and crossing points. Then up here we had Howe come in, didn't do an awful lot, but as soon as he arrived in force, the Americans, in hindsight, I should have played a little bit more earlier with moving a force to the Birmingham Hill and Meeting House. Fortunately, I left it a bit too late, but by this point, I think the battle was more or less decided at this point. So we'll start down here. This is where a lot of the action happened. As you can see here, the British under Nymphausen just started to advance. So for that ford, it's very back and forth. As you can see, the Americans actually crossed the fords, the Brandywine Creek, to actually attack the British at points. And you can see the 9th Virginia over here doing a flank sort of movement. Proctor's battery stands, there's Wayne standing proudly there, so some American troops flee off the field. Ferguson's rifles did very well, leading the charge and actually crossing the river, taking some American units captive. Further down the way, we have a concentration of American forces here. They very much stopped the British crossing at this point. Some really effective artillery fire from the Americans, just generally, I think, put quite a lot of hurt on the Brits and the Hessian allies, including these guys down here, which need to rally. Down here is probably my favourite bit of the battle, very back and forth. Early British capture of Brinton's Ford, but then counter-attack by Lord Stirling actually managed to capture the British battery, and Grey, who was leading the British forces at that time, was actually killed by a stray cannonball, which, funnily enough, actually also happened to Sullivan, who was standing on this fortification here, which they held on by their fingernails. They held that hill there. There's not a lot left up there, but they held on. Also, you'll see some significant American reinforcements coming up here to counter Grant. Again, too little too late. They did have a small skirmish down here as they were mopping up fleeing British units from the initial attack from Lord Stirling there. Then as we move up, this is the remnants of the rather rushed American defence of the Birmingham Meeting House. The British just came on such strength, just pushed them right back. They fought back valiantly, but it wasn't enough. And like I say, I really should have moved Washington a bit earlier to hold this hill, but alas, I didn't. But even so, I think in the next few turns, the British would have crossed the ford here. This would have been an interesting situation down here. It's not a foregone conclusion down here, but the British have won the day. Significant casualties on both sides, really. The British did lose some decent units there, including Grey, and the Americans actually had Maxwell and Stirling captured, and Sullivan was killed. So yes, there we go. So that's that one for you there, chaps. See you in the next vid.